Hello there, you're listening to Tournament in a Teabreak from Britwatch Sports. I'm Ros Satar.
And I'm Anita Stahl.
You didn't need to think about it this time. We are on the, I suppose first Monday, but the second week of the BNP Paribas at Indian Wells. And it's strange that with such a packed field at a Premier Mandatory and a Masters, today was what we would think is a quiet day in inverted commas. There wasn't much going on, and what was going on was pretty dull press-wise because everybody was waiting for Serena and Venus playing their first match here since that ill-fated attempt in 2001. They finally did get this one played, but yeah, there was only one match on everybody's mind. All the documentation was XX1X, the big 29, the 29th edition, pretty much since the time of the womb in the Williams clan. But it was Venus's time today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think most of us saw this coming. Serena's won the last many clashes that they've had.
I think it's like it was 7 out of the last 9.
It's definitely enough that at that point it doesn't really, the details don't matter. It was so significant. But with the circumstances of Serena being off the tour for so long and Venus really having a resurgence the last, not even 6 months, maybe 12 months, I guess, the way Venus has been playing, it's really not a surprise to anyone who watched Serena's first couple of matches that Venus, I mean, just took her in 2 sets, 6-3, 6-4, and honestly, by the end, you thought she was going to go 6-0, 6-2 in the second there for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely thought it was going to be a whitewash, and I don't know about you, but I always find that their matches make for uncomfortable viewing. I've rarely felt comfortable watching them because there seems to be so much tension in the air, the whole sort of sibling wibbling rivalry, whatever you want to call it. But there were definitely some nerves in the air. I mean, how many double faults was it?
That was, let's see, I think Venus got 8 double faults, and Serena actually only got 3 double faults, amazingly. But with Venus, it was really the timing of those double faults is what was telling. How many of them came at the end at the most critical moments, and there you could really see the nerves, which to me was surprising because typically in their clashes I think of Venus as the cool and collected one who forgets it's her sister on the other side of the net, and Serena's the one who's more up and down in their meetings. And I guess this isn't just true for their meetings but their tennis in general. But to see Venus really pull back after being up 3-love in the second set, to see Venus drop a couple, it was really surprising. You could see it was all nerves, the way she was double faulting, hitting balls in the net past the baseline that you knew she should make. And yeah, so it's not what I would have expected from Venus as the cooler one, but like you already introduced, I mean, this match had so much more meaning than any of their other clashes because of what happened in 2001, or rather didn't happen, I guess both, that even though they both in press denied having given that a second thought, I think once they're out there, you could see it wasn't like other matches that they've played. Add to that how long Serena was out. There was a lot more tension than even when they played each other in the US Open quarterfinal when Serena was on her way trying to get that Grand Slam and they met. That seemed relaxed compared to today.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, there's no good time to have a double fault. And I'll admit to feeling somewhat uncharitable that I was sitting and remembering, of course, the whole furore of 2001 and Dementieva starting it all off with her kind of, well, it's all predetermined. And when the first of the errors came in and Serena had a way back, I was just thinking, I actually thought, they're going to put on a good show. We're going to get a 3-setter, especially when like Serena sort of began to claw it back. And those two dumped forehands in the net.
Oh, yeah.
It's very rare for Venus to sort of look like she's just been shot and just like doubled over in sort of the agony of missing a shot. Normally, you know, she's quite stoic.
Well, yeah, and then to put that into context even within the match, so she won the coin toss and chose to serve first. She got 2 aces in that first game.
Yeah.
And then fast forward to the second set, and she's just double faulting left and right.
Yeah, I did like that sort of final ace when she like served out the set to Love. The look across the net was just like kind of take that, sibling. but then it all like caved in after that. I mean, and it's actually not funny. The strange thing about Venus, and I guess, I mean, I've only been on the circuit since 2013, but I've always found her fairly reticent whenever I've had either a one-to-one with her or a press conference with her, and she's pulled back even more. And to my mind, it's like after the Wimbledon episode where the news people in the UK went after Venus in one of the press conferences about the car crash that left her very distressed. And what made things worse was that the AELTC moderator, so it wasn't moderated by anybody from the tour that knows them, it was moderated by the sort of rather formal, I think to be polite, members of the All England Club, really didn't know what to do. And they really didn't know how to calm her down. And so if I can just take like a quick sort of detour, I don't know if you remember seeing Muguruza upset when she'd lost to Mladenovic in a quite sort of heated match. And some poor dude asked an already red-rimmed, shaky-voiced Muguruza a question. And she'd gone. I mean, she'd answered 2 questions, and I think by the time she got to the end of one, her voice was cracking. And by the time this guy started his question, she'd gone. And the moderator was like, can you just wait a minute, took her outside, calmed her down, brought her back in and said, right, carry on. That didn't happen for Venus, and so she was left feeling very vulnerable. But since then, I've noticed even more hostility. And I don't think it was even hostility, it's just even more not caredness about what she does and how she does it. So she came into press, and you'd think she'd lost by the terseness of the answers. Yeah. I mean, what's your take?
Well, I mean, so Venus, of course, anytime she plays her sister, neither one of them, when they play each other, will gloat really after a win. But reflecting on the other press conferences that I've been to that she's given this week, there's definitely a tendency towards very curt answers. And I struggle to identify how much of that is sort of a tongue-in-cheek sense of humor, the way she's looking at the journalist who asks the question when she gives those answers, how much of that is a non-caring, and how much honestly is also just how much does she want to open up to the press with how much she's been hurt. I mean, if you think about what happened, and of course she's been this short with the press before Indian Wells already, but what happened at Indian Wells in 2001, if you read those original press reports, and I've read all the New York Times Sports Illustrated articles from the weeks surrounding that time, in the New York Times, they literally don't mention the racism once. They refer to there being booze and then present the sisters as very entitled, bratty. And so if you're only getting your information, if you weren't there, if you're getting your information from the New York Times, this prestige paper of record, you really then would have looked at the Williams sisters as these conceited, bratty women, girls. I mean, they're 18, 19 years old. And you wouldn't have known from reading the news then the amount of racist vitriol that they faced that day. And so I understand where they would have a very base distrust of the press and the media, but that kind of thinking presents the media as a monolith, which we as individuals in the media, of course, are disinclined to see that way because we see ourselves as a diverse bunch who do that. But from the player perspective, I think the media today is going to be the same as the media in 2001. And so there is a distrust built there. And then if that was re-triggered by insensitive questions after the car accident that she's pretty much been cleared of, and it still must have been a terrible trauma for her to witness that and be involved in it. So to have someone try to go to her, ask flippant questions about it, I mean, I wasn't there.
I don't think they were flippant, but the problem with something like Wimbledon or indeed any slam, and I suppose even to a certain extent local tournaments, is quite often news journalists are sent to cover it, not necessarily tennis journalists. So what we see week on week on week, and what narrative gets built up from the start of the season all the way through to the end, and the fact that that they may or may not recognise you, but they might at least sort of get some feeling of familiarity with certain faces. So certainly the people that do much more on the circuit than I do. The news journalists are there just for those 2 weeks or that 1 week, and then after that they go back to reporting traffic incidents and Burger King holds up or whatever, and it was relentless, but not to the point of going after her, but going after more detail, because of course we didn't have anywhere near as much detail as maybe was available in the States. So, and it's a big story. I mean, she is a former champion, and to be fair, she's actually a beloved champion of Wimbledon. Wimbledon are very fond of their champions. They have a very soft spot for their champions. So, I've certainly noticed that there's a lot more of a prickly approach since then. In Singapore, it almost became a game, but it wasn't really a game, because by the end of the season, everybody's tired. The players are tired. We're tired. Everybody's at the point where they would just like to be anywhere else but the other side of the world at 3 a.m. Covering a press conference. But it didn't really set itself well. And the pitch of my article for this, quite honestly, was that while the victory is Venus's, the night belonged to Serena, because now I think where we're at, she's disarmingly sort of said, on a case of being 0 to Serena, she's still at the S of Serena. And I did try and find out if she'd actually progressed further down the alphabet. But no, we're still at the S apparently. Although I did make her smile, so I did feel slightly better about that. But there are, she does have goals. She's stated that she's got goals, and more than a couple of times she said, I just need to stop being unseeded. And I mean, it's the best and the worst case for her here. She came back 2 years ago, and it was a good homecoming, I think. She's come back here, and her, when she walked out, the crowd reaction I thought was 100 times better than it was when she came back here a couple of years ago. I mean, what was your impression of that?
I missed her walking on court today.
No, on the first match.
Oh, in the first match, yeah.
I did pay attention.
I was thinking tonight. Yeah, I mean, I was there for both. I think this time it wasn't as emotional, but it was bigger. I think at this point it's kind of taken for granted that Serena has forgiven the tournament and its people for everything. And so there was more kind of back when she returned in, was it 2016, 2015, that celebration of her getting there was really coming together and a recognition of the past and that trauma, but moving forward. And now it really felt like celebrating this champion who had just entered into a life of domesticity and motherhood to some extent, coming back to the court. And so I think this was more cheerful. It didn't have the sad undertones.
Yeah.
It was definitely a happy atmosphere when she came back now.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, the first two matches, Serena Diaz did test her. It wasn't a pushover. And I mean, in fact, both of her matches, even though they were straight sets wins, I think she had to work for it. And so, this was always going to be a tough one. Forget about the emotional side of things. Yeah. Venus finished the year at quite a clip last year. But the beginning of this year has been pretty woeful. I mean, these are her first back-to-back wins. And a lot of people I know, I mean, I asked a fair few of my buddies, and almost all of them said Serena to win. I don't know, everybody said Venus to win.
Yeah, I really thought Venus would win, simply because the way Venus has been moving this week. And looking at Serena, she just wasn't moving around the court like she did before she had to take time off and have a child. So it makes sense that she'd be a little bit slower off her feet now. So the strokes were still there, all the ground strokes, when she got to the ball, but she just wasn't getting right. And Diaz can't place the ball like Venus Williams can. Mm-hmm. So it was clear that Serena was going to be more challenged this time. But the other thing is also the intimidation factor, that Serena, despite everything, is going to have an intimidation factor over any opponent just about short of the top 10, and especially Venus Williams. And add to that the atmosphere that this was the first time that the crowd didn't emphatically cheer entirely for Serena, but I really got a sense it was a split cheering. People were just so happy for the match and for both of them.
Yeah.
So that, I think, adds kind of to the almost like counter-intimidation, possibly. That, yeah, I think Venus just wasn't intimidated. She was fit, and she could place that ball in places that if she got it behind Serena couldn't make it.
Yeah. I mean, she's admitted herself that timing's not quite there. You know, I mean, it's not going to be there, no matter how much you try and get that match practice in. You know, there's so many factors. It's never going to be a sort of clear cut 1-for-1 type swap. But you've got to feel for Venus a little bit, even though I find it very, very difficult to even bring myself to go to a press conference now, because you know you end up having so much to do. It's like, do I really want to spend, albeit 10 minutes, if that, you know, listening to 8-word answers that don't really give you any information?
Yeah, well, it's a 10-minute press conference, and 8 minutes of that is the press asking questions, and 2 minutes are awkward silences and Serena answering monosyllabically.
You've got to actually feel for Venus, I think, because now in much the same way as when other players come back. So when Kim Clijsters came back, it was a lot of focus on, you know, what's it like to come back as a mum? What's it like to do this? Oh, look, you won a slam. What's it like to win a slam as a mum? You know, so Venus has probably got a bit of the momentum that she had last year. She's, you know, considering all the injuries and stuff, she's going to go for at least another year. But the focus all this year is not going to be on Venus and anything that she achieves. It's still going to be on, when is Serena going to get seeded? When is Serena going to make a run at a slam? When is Serena going to win Wimbledon? When is Serena going to beat Margaret Court? All valid. Margaret Court's record. I mean, she's not going to beat Margaret Court as into a pulp in the middle of.
I mean, would anybody be sad?
No, but yeah. Moving on. Yeah, but you know, I remember once. I think it was when they met at the Wimbledon semi-final in 2000. So they were still little slip of things, and the BBC did a feature, and there was a lovely segment with somebody, well, yeah, some stiff upper lip person asking Venus, you know, what's it going to be like, you know, because she's your little sister and yada yada. And she said, you know, when you kind of grow up and you realise that, you know, if you're the older sister, you're not always going to get the ice cream and you're not always going to get what you want, and you just kind of have to roll with the punches. Now, I feel that Venus is going to have to roll with the punches this year, because no matter what she is going to do, and last year was her year. Last year, I hesitate to say she stepped out of the shadows, but last year, once Serena had taken her time off, she really did soar. You know, it was a big thing for her to make Singapore. But now she's going to, I think perhaps using the words fade into obscurity is a little harsh, but the focus is, let's face it, going to be on Serena.
Yeah, I wonder for how long.
I think it's going to be until Serena actually achieves something big.
Yeah, that could be. Or if it drags on too long.
How long's too long, though?
If she doesn't make a slam final before the U.S. Open, or I guess, let's say up to and including the U.S. Open, if she doesn't make any slam finals, I think people might write her off if it takes her a full year, anything more than a full year to get back. I
mean, personally, I'd write off Roland Garros straight away. Far too soon. She's never going to, you know, she's never going to do anything on clay. I
mean, I would agree if it were anyone but Serena Williams, but she's just surprised us so many times. She's done it, and I mean, honestly, part of the question is also what's happening with the, you know, everyone's talking about the ATP next gen, but the WTA next gen, I think depending on how that shakes out in the next couple months on clay, because there have been...
But that's what I'm saying. I'd write her off for clay. I wouldn't write her off for grass, but...
Honestly, the way she's moving right now, her pace, I don't know
but compare how she moved at Mubadala and to now. I mean, when she played against Ostapenko, it was great to see her back on court, but it was not a pretty match.
Right, yeah, and
it was... I'm being charitable here. You know, compare then to now. I mean, I didn't see the tiebreak 10s, but I don't think first to 10 is a good judge of anything, to be honest, other than that terrible trophy that looks like a balloon animal. But I don't know. I mean, grass is such a specialist surface.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be curious to see how Kvitova is doing by then. I think that's a big, I want to say wild card, but wild card actually has a specific meaning in tennis, so I'm not going to call it that, but that's what I mean.
Joker.
Yes, she's...
So, oh, no, now we're talking about Djokovic. No, that's not...
Oh, no.
Oh, dear. No.
Question mark.
The middle? No.
Kvitova is a question mark. And by question mark, I mean those boxes in Super Mario that you bump against and gold comes out.
But
you never know what you're going to get with Kvitova when she bumps right against the box. Although in light of Jean Richard, maybe that's not appropriate. We'll see.
I think the word that we're looking for now is anyway.
We'll see how Zrenka's doing by then too.
Yeah, I think Kvitova is probably the biggest danger for her on grass.
Yeah, but in general for this season, with people talking about Serena coming back, if Azarenka gets the chance to play more tournaments, gets to play internationally, right now all she's confirming is that having lost already in Indian Wells, she's already said she'll play Miami, and that's as far as she'll make any commitments. With the custody issues, she doesn't know how much she can travel. But watching her play compared to Serena Williams, Azarenka, I thought just so much more fired up and wanted it a lot more. That she, I think, through the custody issues, has a sense of urgency that Serena Williams doesn't have. And that, can put Serena Williams at peace a little bit, that she doesn't feel as rushed maybe to get whatever points she can when she can. Yeah. But I think Azarenka is really going to be biting at her ankles in this mother's comeback race to a slam.
I mean, she really. I honestly thought that Azarenka was going to have a good deep run here, much more so than Serena. I was quite surprised that she went out so tamely.
Yeah, well, and I mean that was kind of. So I watched that match, and she was down in the first set. But then in the second, when Azarenka was starting to get that energy and find herself, she looked incredible out there. And it wasn't enough at that point to turn it around anymore, given her deficit. But if she can keep that energy going, right now I think she's in better shape to win the big tournaments and make deep runs than Serena Williams.
Interesting.
She's moving faster on court, but she also just gives off a sense of being much more fired up. I'd compare it to a racehorse out of the gates at Pimlico. I mean, those horse races, they're much shorter, obviously, and those horses will just... I'm not going to get into details of horse racing and how horses will go mad and run into a wall, but it's a thing. But that's a sense I got from Azarenka, is that she was just going to just give it her all right away, and I wasn't feeling that from Serena Williams.
No, and quite aside from the fact that Pimlico is actually a tube station, and now because it is rather late. Just for people sort of listening, we're now approaching 1:25. We're in a house that growls at us, and we have disco lights.
All right, I just want to correct Ros here. It's not the house that growls at us. It's the family of raccoons that live in the walls.
I don't even want to believe that.
Welcome to America.
Are you being actually serious that there's raccoons that live in the walls?
No, I don't think that's the case in this house, but I'm from Philly. We've found worse things in our walls.
Like people immured in your walls?
No, but there was actually a really tragic case of raccoon attacking a baby.
Okay. I think we need to stop at that point. But we do have disco lights.
Fantastic disco lights.
Okay, so what you're going to get is a tournament and a tea break every night as we gallop, horse racing link there, as we gallop towards the final. So join us tomorrow, where we will be discussing... What will we be discussing? Who's playing what now tomorrow?
Let's have tomorrow. I mean, we've got Kerber tomorrow.
Yes.
Halep is playing.
Let's have a quick gallop through Kerber and Halep, because Kerber looked great in Australia, and then she and Halep had, in my mind, actually the de facto final in that semi-final. That should have been the final. And then since then, she looked really good in practice, and then just kind of came out for her first match and looked very discombobulated.
Yeah, and specifically what she looked good wasn't just her shape, but how enthusiastic she was, and she looked like she was having fun in a way that you're not used to with Kerber, and that made it so much more shocking when she was clearly upset and very negative with herself in the matches she's played so far. So if she can capture some of that positivity she has in practice, I think she has a great shot against Carol Garcia, who she's playing tomorrow night. But it's going to be mental. I think Garcia's going to be a little bit more stable going in. And with Kerber, it's really a toss-up.
Yeah. I mean, Halep's looked good-ish. She got a bit of a test from Dolhide, which I think gave her a bit of pause for thought. But she came through it really well. She didn't panic. What's on the other side of the draw?
Yeah, so what I'm actually really excited about is Anisimova and Karolina Pliskova. For those of you who have not been following Amanda Anisimova, she's born in New Jersey, lives in Florida. This kid's 16 years old, first 16-year-old since 2005 to make the round of 16 here at Indian Wells. And she's playing phenomenally well, but is kind of pacing herself. So she's not getting ahead of herself with any of the... yeah, and I think she's kind of her team's been pushing back against some of this sort of the next big thing, because so many times we've seen that fail and end an embarrassment. But realistically, the way she's playing, the confidence she's had on the court, I think she might be the next big thing, and maybe I'm just optimistic. I might be optimistic again because of how open she is in press. She's not jaded from the press conferences yet. I mean,
give her time.
She's over 20 years younger than Serena Williams. I mean, or Venus, well, either, I guess. She's
young.
They're twice her age, and so she's just so much more. You'd think, it could go either way. She might be much more stressed in press conferences, but she's relaxed and open, and so I think that. She's not necessarily going to be the media darling, but she opens herself up to make press feel comfortable and give people something to write about. So, and on top of that, she's just showing to be a great player as well. And I think Karolina Pliskova is going to be a really big test for her. She already beat Kvitova, so and that was in 2 sets, 6-2, 6-4. And Kvitova wasn't at her best, but
But neither is Pliskova at the moment, really.
Yeah, so, I mean, if we could see Anisimova have a deep run here, I mean, my dream final would be Anisimova and Kerber.
Okay, well, we'll note that one down.
I'm getting ahead of myself here, but I'm notoriously wrong. I should just pick 2 other people because I always get it wrong.
Okay. But on that note, I think we'll close it down. You'll hear from us tomorrow. You have been listening to Ros Satar and...
Anita Stahl.
And we'll catch you later.